Renegade Immortal, Episode 57. Since becoming an undead, he has never harbored the intent to kill. But unexpectedly, someone sought to disrupt his heart. Continuing from the last chapter, during the conversation between the undead and Zhou Wutai, seemingly trivial words actually carried deadly intent. As a young monk with little experience, he couldn't discern the hidden dangers in the words. From the moment Zhou Wutai stepped into the shop, though his face showed a gentle demeanor, every word he spoke was laced with murderous intent. At first, he tried to provoke disdain to stir up inner conflict within the undead. To transform into a god, one must first become mortal. And the process of becoming mortal is a journey of understanding the Dao, a process of maintaining inner peace. Once the heart is disturbed by comparison, it will give birth to inner demons of disdain. The undead may never reach the godhood stage. After seeing through his plan, Zhou Wutai remained relentless. He shifted to congratulations and made a 100-year pact. In response to Zhou Wutai's provocation, the undead also set a 100-year wager, questioning if the other could reach godhood. Then the undead revealed Zhou Wutai's path to godhood, stating that within 100 years, the young monk was doomed. It turned out Zhou Wutai's mortal path was through teaching disciples and manipulating emotions. In the end, he would reach godhood. Everything he did was to immerse himself deeply in the bond between master and disciple. When he was about to reach godhood, that would be the day he would kill the young monk. Only by personally killing his own disciple could his sorrow reach the highest level of godhood. However, this seemingly deep bond between master and disciple was actually cold and ruthless. But in this ruthlessness, there was a tragic tenderness. This mortal realization is beyond the grasp of ordinary people, at least not for the undead. Thus, the undead's words were both a counter to Zhou Wutai's 100-year pact and a revelation of the sorrowful realization. At the same time, these words left an indelible mark on the young monk's heart. Zhou Wutai, with a bitter smile, cast a deep glance at the undead. It seemed he was lamenting his failed plan, yet at the same time, he was amazed by the undead's insight. The chubby Zhou Wutai stood up angrily. He turned to Shu Tao and said, "Tell your lord, within 3 days, deliver the cauldron to the Dao crown. Then I will no longer pursue Yan Ba." He turned and left the shop without looking back. The young monk stood frozen in place at the sight. He quickly followed his master, feeling there was something strange about today's events. His master was acting unusually and didn't stand up for him as usual. The undead's words, "Within 100 years he will surely die," kept echoing in his mind. At this thought, the young monk shuddered in fear. Zhou Wutai said gently, "Don't overthink it. Why don't you eat the tangerine?" The young monk's eyes reddened slightly. He whispered, "I plan to save it for later." Zhou Wutai gently patted his head and led him out of the street. Even though his face was calm, inside, waves of emotion surged. He had already regarded the undead as his greatest opponent in life. Meanwhile, the undead stood in the shop, contemplating for a long time, finally letting out a silent laugh. He decided to let go of the matter to avoid disrupting his peaceful state of mind. Beside him, Shu Tao was utterly shocked. Though he had always found the undead to be unusual, he never imagined that a few words could drive away the fearsome, mighty Zhou Wutai, making him slink away like a beaten dog. Just a few days ago, the young lord had dreamed of surrendering the cauldron to save his life. Time flew by, and 7 days later, Shu Tao brought a dignified, middle-aged man to the shop. The man said nothing, and suddenly knelt down, bowing 3 times before Wang Lin. Wang Lin remained calm as usual because he instantly recognized the man as Prince Shizi of the South. Though to mortals, Shizi was undoubtedly a royal figure, to the undead, he was no different from an ant. Shizi, knowing the undead's temperament, respectfully placed a storage bag full of snacks on the table, then left with Shu Tao. After they left, Wang Lin's life returned to its usual peace, as if all that had happened was but a fleeting moment. He continued waking up early each morning, carving wooden sculptures, and waiting for the child from Dan Yu's family to bring freshly brewed fruit wine. Wang Lin would sip wine while engrossed in his carving. In the blink of an eye, years passed. This lifestyle became ingrained in his very bones, completely detaching him from the life of slaughter. It was as if he had split into two from his former self. No trace of bloodlust remained in him. In its place was a sense of tranquility and peace, a profound understanding of the mortal world. Wang Lin didn't know what kind of realization he would reach in the future, but he wasn't in a rush. He chose to patiently wait, letting his understanding accumulate over time. He enjoyed this life. If his parents were still alive, he would have no regrets, spending his days in this shop with them. Time flew by. 5 years later, one day, Danyu's father finally succumbed to the cycle of life and death. The iron saw shop hoisted a white flag. The cries from inside were filled with boundless sorrow. Wang Lin stood in front of his own shop, gazing at the scene across the way. Memories flooded his mind, recalling the day he left the capital over 20 years ago. He still remembered how Danyu's father was once a cheerful man, often inviting him over. He would never forget the embarrassment when borrowing money to expand the shop. However, Wang Lin could no longer recall how many times he had eaten at their home or how many times they had drunk together. He deeply understood that life and death are part of the Heavenly Dao. Even if he had used defiant techniques to extend the man's life by a few years, fate would ultimately catch up, and it might even cause him to fall into a lower realm in the 6 paths of reincarnation. At this moment, Wang Lin found himself unconsciously holding a black flower. It is worth noting that this flower is no ordinary item, but a rare material for refining the gathering spirit pill. If a mortal's soul has not completely dissipated, this flower can help solidify their soul, allowing them to be reborn into a good family in reincarnation. Wang Lin sighed and slowly walked into the sawmill. He was met with faces full of grief. Danyu and his wife knelt beside his father's coffin, their eyes bloodshot, clearly from bitter weeping. In Danyu's mother's eyes, there was endless sorrow and despair. Looking back over 20 years, Wang Lin had long understood the deep affection between this couple. When Wang Lin appeared, Danyu's mother whispered, "Brother Wang has arrived." "Greetings, Brother Wang," Danyu echoed. Hearing this, Wang Lin sighed softly, stepped forward to help her up, and took an incense stick from someone nearby. He respectfully paid his respects. But at that moment, Danyu's father's body began to emit a wisp of black smoke, gradually forming into his appearance before death. His body was hunched, his face pale as paper, as if he had just emerged from an ice cellar. He seemed as though he could disappear at any moment. His gaze finally settled on Wang Lin, as among all present, only Wang Lin could see him. In Wang Lin's hand, the black flower slowly transformed into specks of starlight, sprinkling over Danyu's father's soul. In an instant, he no longer felt cold, and his gaze toward Wang Lin was full of gratitude. Only then did Danyu's father realize that the brother Wang before him was no ordinary person. He immediately kowtowed several times to Wang Lin, reluctantly glanced at his wife and Danyu, and then turned into a wisp of blue smoke, ascending. At that moment, a tender and sharp voice broke the silence. "Father, mother, I saw Grandpa." Danyu's child looked up at the sky, puzzled. But who would believe the words of a child? After all, the cycle of life and death is the law of the world. No one can escape it. Wang Lin gazed at Danyu's father's aged remains and suddenly experienced a bit of enlightenment. This was the first time in over 20 years since becoming mortal that he felt the intangible Heavenly Dao. After a moment of bewilderment, Wang Lin returned to his wood-carving shop, sitting dazed by the fireplace. Memories of his past interactions with Danyu's family kept resurfacing in his mind. As their faces gradually blurred, Wang Lin seemed to see an invisible force enveloping the three of them. It was this force that caused Danyu's parents to grow white hair and allowed Danyu to grow strong. Suddenly, Wang Lin's body began to float, rising higher and higher. During the ascent, Wang Lin not only saw countless mortals emitting that same force, but also began to understand a deeper truth of the Heavenly Dao. And not only did all living things possess this power, but even every blade of grass and tree contained it. It seemed to be everywhere. Suddenly, a strong impulse surged within Wang Lin's heart. He wanted to trace the source of this power. As he continued drifting upward, a giant, earth-toned planet appeared in his view. Even in the vastness of the starry sky, the power was still present. Yet, no matter how hard he searched, he could never touch the root of this power. But Wang Lin was not someone who gave up easily. He continued his pursuit across the vast universe, seeking the source of the power. Just as he was about to move far away from the earth-toned planet, a giant stone appeared in the starry sky, with an old man with white hair sitting on it. As the old man passed by Wang Lin, he looked at him with mild interest and said slowly, "I didn't expect someone on this abandoned cultivation planet to have such a deep understanding of the Tao. But this is just the understanding of transformation into a god. Don't be too greedy. The mysteries of the Tao take millions of years to comprehend, and even then, one can barely grasp a fraction of them. If you continue this pursuit, I'm afraid your physical body will decay before you find the source. So think carefully." After hearing the old man's words, a sense of confusion arose in Wang Lin's heart. The old man laughed heartily and said, "Let me form a karmic bond with you today. If you can leave this abandoned cultivation planet one day, come find me on Tian Yunzi's star. I will take you as a disciple, and after 100 years of cultivation, you'll see." As he finished speaking, he gently flicked his finger, and Wang Lin felt a powerful force push him downward. In the blink of an eye, he had returned to his woodcarving shop. Wang Lin suddenly opened his eyes. In that short period, his cultivation level had soared from the middle to the peak of the Yuanying stage. At the same time, Wang Lin also understood the cost of comprehending the Tao. If he hadn't encountered that old man who called himself Tian Yunzi, his divine sense might have been lost in the vastness of space. At the same time, Wang Lin also found a star map imprinted in his mind. Yes, it was left behind by Tian Yunzi. In this map, there was a planet many times larger than the Vermilion Bird Star. It was the Tian Yunzi star that Tian Yunzi had mentioned. Since the day Wang Lin became mortal, over 30 years had passed in the blink of an eye, and now he had become an old man with white hair. 7 years ago, Danyu's mother passed away due to illness, leaving Danyu to shoulder all the family responsibilities. Just as Danyu's father had passed the blacksmithing skills to him, Danyu also taught his son, Xiao Nu, the craft to carry on the family tradition. However, 3 years ago, Xiao Nu was chosen by a cultivator from the White Cloud sect and was given the name Zheng Wenjuo as his disciple. Danyu felt immense pride and told everyone he met, to the point where the entire street knew about it. Wang Lin, however, was not surprised, as he had noticed Xiao Nu's exceptional talent for cultivation from a young age, even surpassing his own. During his transformation into mortality, Wang Lin had formed a karmic bond with Danyu's family and often disguised cultivation-enhancing pills as candies to settle this karmic debt by giving them to Xiao Nu. Although Xiao Nu's master was only at the Jidan level, Wang Lin had secretly observed his character and found him far superior to his own former master, Sun Dazhuang. After Xiao Nu left, Danyu hired workers to manage the blacksmith shop and spent his days around Wang Lin, watching him carve wooden sculptures. Since Danyu's parents had passed away, every New Year's, he would prepare a meal and bring it, along with his wife, to Wang Lin's home to share. It seemed Danyu treated Wang Lin as a father, and their gatherings brought warmth to Wang Lin, a feeling that was somewhat foreign but not unwelcome to him. Just like every year, it snowed again. However, this year's snow was different, so heavy that houses collapsed, and many mortals froze to death overnight. What was even stranger was that the snow did not fall from the clouds, but appeared silently from the void, covering the entire four-sect alliance. Wang Lin sensed something was wrong, feeling a faint, killing intent within the snowflakes, which made the cold so unnatural. On the third day of the heavy snowfall, all the black celestial trees used for cultivation in the city were struck by lightning, and no cultivators were spared. At the same time, countless flying jade slips appeared out of nowhere, landing in the hands of cultivators of Zhuji level and above. Wang Lin quickly intercepted one of the slips, using his divine sense to probe its contents. A voice inside the slip announced that all cultivators within the four-sect alliance should prepare for battle, as the Inkwater sect, White Cloud sect, Greenwood Cliff, and Black Soul sect had opened their gates, calling for scattered cultivators, demon path followers, and ascetics, warning that refusal would have consequences. After pondering for a moment, Wang Lin crushed the jade slip and with a flash appeared in the sky above the capital. High in the sky, the void rippled with static energy, but Wang Lin knew these ripples were just a cover. With a wave of his hand, he broke through one of the ripples, but the sight before him made his face change dramatically. A massive rift, 100 meters long, had appeared in the void above, with snowflakes whistling out from within. Wang Lin spread his divine sense and found that within tens of thousands of miles, there were countless similar rifts in the void, leading him to deduce that the entire Alliance territory was likely filled with such rifts. Wang Lin did not act rashly. He quietly returned to his woodcarving shop, for matters of this nature were better left to cultivators of higher standing to handle. Deep down, Wang Lin still felt uneasy. At that moment, a figure wearing a raincoat pushed open the shop door. Seeing this, Wang Lin calmly said, "It has been many years. I hope you have been well, my friend." The man laughed heartily, took off his raincoat, revealing a chubby face with large ears. It was none other than Zhou Wutai, the one who once almost prevented Wang Lin from transforming into a god. He grabbed the wine bottle on the table and took a big swig. Wang Lin glanced at Zhou Wutai and noticed that his cultivation had improved over the last 10 years, but he was still slightly inferior. Zhou Wutai's gaze was then fixed on an old man's wood carving on the shelf. A look of admiration gradually appeared on his face. He took the wood carving, observed it carefully for a long time, then gently put it down. Zhou Wutai sighed softly and smiled bitterly, saying, "Brother Wang, you have indeed surpassed me. I've been standing still for the past 10 years." Wang Lin listened calmly, shook his head, and said, "It was just luck." Zhou Wutai stared at the wood carving, noting how it captured the essence of the passage of time. "You've already carved out the concept of time. This wood carving can be considered one of the finest treasures in the Yuanying stage. 10 years ago, Brother Wang couldn't have achieved this. I admire you greatly." Wang Lin chuckled softly. "If you like it, I'll give it to you." Hearing this, Zhou Wutai froze in place, his eyes filled with complex emotions. He looked at Wang Lin, then back at the wood carving. After a moment, he took out a jade slip and placed it on the side, saying, "Thank you, Brother Wang." His animosity toward Wang Lin had greatly diminished. After all, someone who could casually gift such a treasure had a heart far beyond that of ordinary men. In Zhou Wutai's eyes, even if he couldn't fully comprehend the essence of time, having the wood carving in hand would allow him to grasp some understanding. However, as he thought about it, he realized the essence he pursued had nothing to do with the one in the wood carving, which left him feeling conflicted. After an internal struggle, he looked up at Wang Lin and bitterly smiled, saying, "Brother Wang, I admit defeat. I don't want this wood carving anymore. Take this jade slip as a gift. It contains a divine technique for crafting magical weapons." As it turned out, Wang Lin gave away the wood carving to settle an old grudge. However, Zhou Wutai wasn't after the essence of time, but rather persisted on his own path of mortal transformation. Wang Lin had encountered few people like him in his life. With a smile, he nodded and said, "If that's the case, I will humbly accept."